Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're tackling a subject that's been making headlines and sparking debate, the Chinese Communist Party.
A CCP. It's a big one.
To put it mildly, we're lucky enough to have some great material to work with, by the way. You sent over excerpts from their Wikipedia article, which gives us a solid overview.
Always a good starting point.
Right. And we've got that academic paper you sent, the one focusing on the party structure. That's going to be key, because today our mission is to really understand how this party ticks, like where they came from, how they're organized, and how they actually operate in China's political system.
That's a fascinating story and a lot more complex than people realize.
Absolutely. And it's easy to forget. They started from practically nothing. 1921, a secret meeting in Shanghai's French concession, just a handful of members. Hard to imagine that, right? Considering what they've become.
It's remarkable, the journey they've been on, from those clandestine beginnings to, well, one of the most powerful entities on the planet.
It makes you wonder, how did they go from those early struggles against the Nationalist Party to where they are now? I mean, the Long March alone, over 90% casualties. Talk about a testament to their commitment.
The Long March is more than just a historical event. It's a defining moment in the CCP's story. It showed their tenacity, their ability to endure hardship. But more than that, it solidified Mao Zedong's leadership. Think about it. Thousands of kilometers, constant pursuit, yet he rallied them, held them together.
It's almost hard to comprehend that level of, I don't know, belief, I guess.
Yeah.
In a leader, in a cause.
It wasn't just charisma, though, was it? It was about the CCP learning to function, even thrive, under unimaginable pressure. And that experience, that forging of unity, would prove crucial to their victory in the Chinese Civil War.
Which brings us to this whole idea of the CCP as a state party. Like, it's not just about politics in the way we usually think about it. They're woven into the fabric of China itself, right?
Precisely. Their influence permeates every level of Chinese society, which is why understanding their structure is so important. We have to start with the Central Committee.
The heart of it all. And then, of course, there's the Politburo. And at the very top, the General Secretary.
And none other than Xi Jinping in that role right now.
These aren't just titles, are they? They represent how power flows in one of the world's most populous nations.
Exactly. And the implications are far-reaching.
So let's start unpacking this, shall we? We're talking roughly 200 members in the Central Committee, making them the key decision makers in China. But the thing is, they only meet once a year.
It's hard to fathom, isn't it? The sheer weight of those meetings. Decisions being made that affect the lives of over 1 billion people.
It's like a high-stakes board meeting, but for an entire nation. And with so many voices, how do they actually reach a consensus?
That's where this concept of democratic centralism comes in. It's a bit of a tightrope walk, really. Within the CCP, there is room for debate, for different viewpoints to be aired, but always within the boundaries of party ideology.
So it's controlled debate, essentially.
You could say that. But here's the key thing. Once a decision is reached collectively, every single member, including those on the Central Committee, is bound to uphold and implement that decision. It ensures that there's unity, a disciplined approach across all levels of the party.
Makes sense, especially with a group that large. But you have to wonder, right, about the internal dynamics. I mean, we hear this phrase, unified front, but surely there are disagreements, factions, maybe even power struggles happening behind closed doors.
It's a question many scholars have grappled with. Unfortunately, we're not privy to the CCP's inner working. There's a certain opacity there, especially when it comes to things like internal debates and how power is truly distributed.
So we see the surface, but what lies beneath?
Remains a bit of a mystery. What we do know is that the selection process for these positions is incredibly rigorous. It's about weeding out any potential dissenters, those who don't align with the party line. These are individuals with a proven track record of competence and unwavering loyalty to the CCP.
They don't just let anyone into that inner circle.
Absolutely not. And speaking of inner circles, within that already exclusive Central Committee, there's an even more exclusive group, the Politburo. We're talking about 25 individuals who wield immense influence.
The power players. The ones calling the shots that shape the lives of 1.4 billion people.
They're closed-door meetings. Imagine trying to be a fly on the wall in one of those rooms. The decisions made there have ripple effects, not just within China, but globally. Economic policies, international relations, you name it.
It's almost dizzying to consider, isn't it? The weight of responsibility. And then, of course, there's the top spot, the General Secretary.
Currently held by Xi Jinping.
He's not just leading the party, he's the face of China on the world stage.
And his influence is undeniable. The General Secretary sets the agenda, guides those Politburo discussions. Their decisions impact everything from global trade to, well, even the fate of the planet when you think about climate change.
It's a position of incredible power, that's for sure. It's easy to focus on those top positions, the Central Committee, the Politburo. But the thing about the CCP is their reach goes way beyond those inner circles.
That's the key to how they operate, their real strength. It's
Yeah.
this vast network, a web of influence that extends outward down to every level of society.
You're talking about the party branches, right? Those are everywhere. Universities, businesses, even small villages. How does that even work on such a massive scale?
Think of it this way. They're like the CCP's local representatives. They're eyes and ears on the ground. Their job is twofold. First, they make sure party policies are actually being put into practice, that the directives from the top are being followed. But they also provide feedback from the ground level, so it's a two-way street in a sense.
So it's about maintaining control, but also about staying informed. A feedback loop, kind of.
Exactly. And all of this intricate system operates under the umbrella of democratic centralism, which we talked about earlier. So once decisions are made at the top, those party branches are the ones responsible for rolling them out, making sure everyone's on board, singing from the same hymn sheet. Unity and discipline are paramount.
Right, and that brings up some interesting questions, doesn't it? About things like individual freedom, how dissent is handled within a system like that, especially in today's world where information travels so fast.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. On the one hand, you can argue that this system has contributed to China's economic growth, its stability on the world stage. But on the other, there are definitely questions about freedom of speech, about the limits of independent thought.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? Balancing individual liberty with the needs of the state, or in this case, the party. How does the CCP reconcile those things, especially in our hyper-connected world?
That's the million-dollar question, really. Officially, they argue that their system allows for what they call controlled dissent, that there are avenues for expressing different viewpoints within the party structure. But at the same time, there's no denying the CCP's tight grip on information, on media.
The censorship is hard to ignore.
To say the least. They've invested heavily in things like censorship technology, propaganda, all to shape the narrative, control what people see and hear. How they manage that in the coming years will be a major factor in their long-term stability.
It's almost like they're trying to walk this tightrope containing the flow of information with one hand while harnessing its power with the other. A delicate balancing act, for sure.
A powerful image, and one that really gets at the heart of this whole thing, because there's no denying it. The CCP is incredibly effective at getting things done. They can implement policies on a massive scale with a speed and efficiency that most governments can only dream of.
That's undeniable.
But that centralized control comes at a cost. There are always trade-offs.
We've talked about the CCP today as this incredibly well-organized, highly centralized machine. But it's important to remember they weren't always a global superpower, right? Their early years were marked by struggle, by near defeat even. What can those early days, especially the Long March, tell us about the strategies they still use today?
That's such a great question because it highlights something crucial. You can't understand the CCP without understanding their history. It shapes everything. And the Long March, for all its hardships, instilled a sense of discipline, of unity, of strategic thinking that continues to define the party's approach even now.
It's like their blueprint for overcoming obstacles, achieving their goals.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful strategies they took away from that experience, one that they still employ today, is this idea of cultivating a very strong sense of nationalism, of national pride. They've effectively linked the party's destiny to the idea of China's resurgence.
So it's about more than just control through rules and regulations. It's about creating this narrative.
Exactly. This narrative of shared progress, of national rejuvenation, all under the CCP's guidance. It's powerful stuff, especially when coupled with tangible economic improvements. It gives people a reason to buy into the system, to believe in it.
To feel like they're part of something bigger. It's amazing what we've uncovered about the CCP today. I mean, we're talking about a journey from a small, almost clandestine meeting in 1921 to this incredibly complex system that governs a global superpower. But I think there are probably some listeners out there thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but why should I care? How does any of this affect me?
It's a fair question. It's easy to think of the CCP as something distant, something that doesn't really impact our daily lives. But the reality is their influence extends far beyond China's borders. What they do affects the global economy, international relations, even the technology we use every single day.
It's all interconnected. You're right. So whether you're an entrepreneur, an investor, or just someone who wants to understand how the world works today, the decisions made within the CCP have ripple effects that touch all of us, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. And the goal of this deep dive has been to give you a glimpse behind the curtain, so to speak, to understand not just what the CCP does, but why they do it, their motivations, their strategies, that historical context that shapes their entire worldview.
It's like we've been given the tools to decode their actions, to understand what lies beneath the surface.
Precisely. And that kind of understanding is invaluable in today's world, no matter what you do.
This has been an incredible deep dive, insightful, thought-provoking. We've covered a lot of ground, explored the CCP's origins, their ideology, their intricate power structure, and we've touched on the challenges they face both domestically and on the world stage. As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners? Something to ponder as they continue to learn about China's future?
Here's something to consider. The CCP is facing some major challenges in the coming decades. Economic inequality, environmental concerns, a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. The question isn't whether they'll maintain control, that's almost a given, but how they'll adapt to navigate these turbulent waters. Will we see a more open, more democratic China emerge? Or will they double down on control and centralization? The path they choose will have a profound impact, not only on China's 1.4 billion citizens, but on all of us.
A sobering thought and a reminder that we're all stakeholders in this globalized world. And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive on the Chinese Communist Party. It's been a pleasure exploring this complex and fascinating topic with you all.